Guys, welcome to the program. My name is Joker with all the news you didn't know you needed to know. Today, earlier, I did a 3.5, almost 4 hour, 3.5 hour live stream over on Rumble. And that was to follow along with the full hearing with the director of the Secret Service, Kim Cheatle, so we could get some answers as to what's happened in the 9 days since the event that happened at the Trump rally. And today's answers were lacking severely. In other words, we weren't told anything that we didn't already know, except there's one brief moment where a non-answer actually gave us a really big answer. I know that may sound a little confusing, but Kim Cheatle was asked a question and she refused to answer, and that in and of itself gave us an answer. You know, right now there's all types of theories and everything's going wild on Twitter, and I've said multiple times, the longer this goes on without any real accountability or answers from our government, it allows people to come up with their own theories. And when people come up with their own theories, they may not be accurate. They may not, because they're not on site. But when you look at Dr. Chris Martenson taking audio recording and, talking about echo, and you've got acoustic experts from different universities and colleges coming forward saying that, hey, that sounds like there's some differences in the echo and the report, and there might have been 2, even 3 people that were in on this event. And yes, I am guarding my language because of Big Mama YouTube. We have more and more questions, and the government came out and confirmed nothing except that some of the theories that people are coming up with might be right. I'm going to jump right into it. These are the top 3 or 4 testimonies out of the 3.5 hours. We didn't get really any answers. But I do want you to hear the questions that were being asked, mostly by the independent and more conservative-leaning members of, I would guess, Congress. I know Mr. Donalds and Mr. Burchett are in Congress, so I don't know if any senators were involved in this yet. We'll jump right into it. You guys will see what I'm talking about. Not a lot of answers, but there's one important answer we should be paying attention to. I will highlight when that moment hits. So there you go. All right, let me hit play on this thing. It's only about 13 minutes. I'll try to keep my talking to a minimum, and I'll actually let me put this on 1.25 speed. It should still be perfectly legible for those of you just listening to what the questions that were asked.
We have satellite images from the Butler Fairgrounds. Have you visited the site?
No, I have not.
9 days and you have not visited the site. You should have been there that night. Did you talk to, that evening, did you talk to the team, the heroes that surrounded the president? Did you call them that night?
They were still operational work.
So that's an answer is no. Did you call them the next day?
President. Yes, I spoke with
You called them the very next day, not the day of, or was it 72 hours after?
I don't know the timeline, but I spoke with
Okay,
them
because you're under oath.
immediately following.
I think it was 72 hours after you waited 3 days. What is immediately clear is that there are a number of structures that need to be secured. Of these, Director, other than the first, immediate 4, what's the most dangerous site that should have been secured? Because security 101, you got to mitigate the high ground.
Yes.
Okay. Do you know what the next most dangerous site? What was the closest structure to the president, other than the 4 immediate ones that you had your teams on?
There are a number of structures around that event site.
So he says, what is the closest building to the president during his speech, other than the 4 that were immediately behind him? And her answer is there were a number of structures. There's one glaring, obvious one. She can't even answer that. That if I were to show you 4 letters, A, B, C, and D, and I say, okay, ignoring A, B, and C, what letter is left? And you say, there's lots of letters that are also in the alphabet. That's literally what she did.
You know who has visited the site 2 more times than you have? And he had a drone, and he picked the AGR building. So you said, do you remember in an ABC interview you did that you didn't have people on the roof of the AGR building because you were worried about safety because of the slope?
I recall that statement.
Okay. Does the Secret Service have written policy you can share with us about slope roofs?
No.
Okay. So why'd you act like there was one? Because is it your practice to comment on enormous events of enormous national implications when you're ignorant of the facts? That's rhetorical. So here's the thing with the slopes. You go all the way up to like 1812, you can go to a 112, which is about as flat as you can get without it being completely flat. And you're saying that there was a danger, safety concern there, but the problem is, Director, you put your counter on a 312 roof, which is steeper than the 112. And by the way, the 112 is ADA compliant. You can build a ramp for a wheelchair on a 112 roof.
I want to comment on this quickly. There's perfectly flat, and then there's a 112. That is literally the most gentle slope you can put on a roof to have it not considered being flat. She said she didn't put any men on the roof of that building because it was a slope and it could be dangerous. It is a 112 slope, which means it drops 1 inch every, I guess, 12 inches. Would that be correct? Or would that be 1 inch every 12 feet? I don't know what the sloping means on a roof. But the whole point is a 112 is the first degree of lift after it being a completely flat roof. She didn't put anybody there because it was a sloped roof, but then it's ADA compliant, meaning a wheelchair ramp can be 112. That it's easy enough that even a person in a wheelchair can roll up that degree of slope. That means this is just an excuse. It's not a viable reason not to have anybody on top of that building.
So these are nothing but pathetic excuses, and they make no sense, and they're a bunch of cow dung. All the law enforcement I've spoken with over the last 9 days are amazed that the AGR rooftop was not secure. And you want to know why? Because it's dangerous. I have never had any long training in my life. That is until Saturday, where we recreated the events in Savoy, Texas. We recreated what happened in Butler. I was lying prone on a sloped roof at 130 yards at 6:30 at night. And I knew that he had a scope, but I didn't know what kind, red dot or magnified. So I 8 rounds from both. You know what the result was? 15 out of 16 kill shots. And the one I missed would have hit the president's ear. That's a 94% success rate. And that was a better shot than me. It is a miracle President Trump wasn't. Corey Comparatori's life is over because that damn shooter made it on the roof. And it wasn't the roof that was dangerous. It was a nut job on top of the roof. You know what else is dangerous? I believe your horrifying ineptitude and your lack of skilled leadership is a disgrace. Your obfuscating today is shameful. And you should be fired immediately and go back to Garden Doritos. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
So he recreated it. He crawled up on a 112. He's not practiced with, as he said, long form hole punchers. And he was able to hit 94%, taking the same type of actions. And so, as he said, it's kind of a miracle that Trump was ended on that day. This goes to show you the incompetence. And this is why so many people are saying or wondering, is this an inside job or the worst act of negligence in security history? Because even anybody that knows anything knows that you want to eliminate the high ground. Even Star Wars fans know that you lose once you have lost the high ground. This is so basic. Either she is utterly incompetent, which is what more than likely this is, but when you do have this type of incompetence and arrogance that she won't step down, this is leading people to believe that something's going on. But there is a point later on that does point to it being something on the inside. And again, it's a non-answer. We're getting there. I gotta tease a little bit and save the best for last, because
American people are incredibly distrustful because it has taken 9 days to even get a scintilla of evidence out of you. Maybe if I was CNN or ABC or NBC, I would have gotten much more thorough and accurate information, but we have not received that in a subpoenaed hearing in front of this Congress. That is why the American people are frustrated, and I echo the bipartisan calls on this committee and all across this country that you should resign, or maybe when the president wakes up from his nap, he can fire you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chair now recognizes Mr. Luke.
6:11 p.m. Eastern on July 13th. NBC reported that at 5:51 p.m., 20 minutes before the shooting began, the state police informed the Secret Service of their concern. Now, the rally was not paused at that point, correct?
No.
And according to NBC, just 2 minutes later, at 5:53 p.m., the Secret Service notified its snipers about the gunman. The rally wasn't paused at that point either, correct?
No.
Let me show you some video footage by rally goers. If you could play the video on the screen up here. This was taken 2 minutes before the shooting started. If you could turn up the volume.
Criminals. We have criminals. We have
We have people that
For those of you just listening, this is them pointing out the obvious that there's the guy rolling around on top of the 112 roof.
This behavior, that looks like behavior to me. And the rally wasn't paused at that point either, correct?
I can tell you, as I stated earlier, sir, that the moment that the shift surrounding the president were aware of an actual threat.
That's a threat right there. The guy's on the roof and everybody's yelling at him.
Yes.
And directing the officer's attention to him. The rally was not paused at that point, correct?
We are currently still combing through communications and when communications were passed.
Well, I can point you to this communication. It's 2 minutes before the started ringing out. Director Cheatle, yes or no? Was there ever a moment where the Secret Service actually considered pausing the rally?
The Secret Service would have paused the rally had they known or been
So the
told
answer is
there was
no.
an actual.
The answer is no, correct?
I can speak to you in generalities.
No, I don't want
I don't
generalities. I
know
want
all of the
specifics.
communications.
The answer is no. You did not consider pausing the rally, correct?
The people that are in charge of protecting the president on that day would never bring the former president out if there was a that had been identified.
Well, they did, because we've now identified 3 points in the 20 minutes before that the emerged.
And what he's talking about there is kind of what everybody said, where you've got people screaming something's going on. There's somebody up there. Who is this person? He supposedly had a bike, which is not supposed to be allowed anywhere close to the event, but he had a bike there. He had a couple of backpacks, which shouldn't be anywhere near there. He had a rangefinder, so he shouldn't have been. And she kept saying, well, he was suspicious, but not actually a problem. And what they were saying in this clip is he's like, yeah, there's a problem. Everybody's screaming this is a problem. Why didn't the Secret Service detail know these people were screaming about this problem and you secure the president before anything happened? And the only time she said, well, we did do something a problem. And it's, yes, after 3 rounds went out of the end of his hole puncher and basically punched the ear of the president. Yeah, that's kind of too late at that point. At no point during this whole 3.5 hour fiasco was there any accountability on her part. Most of her answers just kept saying there's an investigation. And when they said, okay, what are the results of it? She said, oh, the FBI. I'm not doing that. So she shirked off all responsibility. And I'll do more of a summary at the end, but you guys are seeing where most of this is going is, but I don't know. It's a whole lot of I don't know.
Ms. Cheatle, you said that the buck stops with me, and I agree. I don't think you should resign. I think you should have been fired. Ma'am, you are a DEI horror story. I've told my daughter multiple times, my wife and my daughter, we talk to her all the time about how she's going to succeed in life. She'll succeed in life by achieving. Ma'am, you have not achieved today. You've let the American public down. If it was up to me, you'd be gone. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
You keep referring to the FBI. When asked how many shell casings were on the roof, you referred to the FBI. When asked if there were in the car, you referred to the FBI. When asked if Crooks was acting alone, you referred to the FBI. See a common theme here? I can go on and on. My question is, who at the FBI should I speak with? Wait for it. Wait for it.
The FBI is responsible for the criminal.
Is there a name?
I'm not certain.
I'm not certain.
Who at
All
the
right, here we go.
FBI
I'm
is
not
running the
certain. I
investigation.
don't know. Let me ask a different question. Have you been in communication with the FBI?
Yes, I have.
With whom?
I speak with the director and the deputy director.
Okay. And what have they shared with you about this investigation?
Now, this is the part I want you guys to listen to. This is the non-answer that is telling a whole lot of people an answer that they want to know. We'll talk about it right after you hear it, but it's very telling.
So I'll give you an opportunity to answer again. Did they share with you how many shell casings were on the roof?
They have shared with me the.
Did they
evidence they've
share with you how many shell casing were on the roof?
collected. Yes.
Okay, how many were there?
I would refer to the FBI for their
How
investigation
many were there?
and their information that they need to share in their investigation.
So they've shared the information with you. You just don't want to share the information with us, correct?
We have concurrent investigations that are going on.
So they have shared this information with you. You know the answer to the question. You just refuse to answer the question from the member of Congress who has subpoenaed you to be here. Is there a different answer to that question?
I was always willing to come here and testify before this oversight hearing.
Beautiful. Then let's
Wasn't
do
a-
that.
was
Let's
necessary.
for once have your actions match your words. So you've been in communication with the FBI. You know the answers, and you refuse to tell us the answers. So I will ask you again. You know how many shell casings were on that roof. What is the answer to that question?
I think it's pertinent.
What
to talk-
is the answer to that question?
I think it's pertinent to talk to you about the information that the Secret Service has and that the Secret Service knows related
I'm
to the
asking
events
you
on
an
that day.
answer to the question. If you're supposed to be in charge, if the buck stops with you, how come you can't share the answers? What are you covering up? What are you hiding, my friend?
I'm not covering anything.
Then why can't you answer a simple question?
I would leave it to the criminal investigation to answer questions related to that.
Director
That tells so many people an answer that they want to know. If a non-answer is an answer, a refusal to answer is an answer. You know, Dr. Chris Martin, because I told you guys, I'm never going to report something. I don't do clickbait headlines. I don't say, oh, here's this thing and But this really isn't clickbaity headline. It is a non-answer that is telling you the answer. She's in direct communication with the head of the FBI. She knows the answer. She's refusing to answer a question that in and of itself would be an answer many of us want to know. Dr. Chris Martinson did this audio test. He said, hey, this sounds like rounds were fired from this location. This sounds like a completely different hole puncher doing these rounds that have a different echo and a different pattern, and everything sounds different. And then you hear the single pop from a long ways away that is supposedly ending Mr. Crooks. She did testify that there was one single round from the counter group that was sent. I have to watch these words because of YouTube, because I want to get this as far and wide as I can. There was a single round sent back to Mr. Crooks that ended him. So when Dr. Chris Martinson's saying, look, you hear pop, 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 and then over here you had 5 shots, and then you hear pow, one single, that's a whole lot of rounds. And what people want to know is how many did Mr. Crooks get off? Because now we have the single round for the counter team that ended Mr. Crooks. We have that one accounted for because she said there was one round from the counter team. So we heard a whole lot of shots over here. How many rounds were on the roof? Because if she says 3, that means there's somebody else involved with this. If she says 8, okay, why did they sound different? Where are those casings? We want to see those casings. We want them examined. We want to do forensics on them. If she says 8, but they can only find 3, there's a problem. See, all of a sudden, now there can be some accountability. But instead, it's slippery. Oh, I can't answer this. She answered nothing. But in this answer, she answered everything, which is going to lead most people to say they're lying to us. There's something else going on. There's another person involved and another location involved, and someone else was involved with this. That is what I believe at this point in time after hearing this testimony, after hearing Dr. Chris Martinson's acoustic examination. I'm now to the point where you're going to have to prove me without a shadow of a doubt with an independent investigation that is not one of the 3-letter agencies. And even then, I still probably won't believe it. That's how bad this went today. 0 answers and a whole lot more questions based on the non-answers like she just gave. I think I have 1 or 2 people asking questions left, or maybe this one. And this is a woman from Florida, one of the representatives from Florida asking questions, and she finally just had enough. Somehow she's able to pin Kim Cheatle in a corner enough to say, I think I've caught you in a lie. I'm gonna push for independent counsel and investigation in this thing.
Cheatle, can you please give me the names of the individuals who are in charge of your conduct for the rally?
I'm not going to release names.
Can you give me the
today.
titles? And how many individuals?
No,
Nothing?
we had a full advance team that was responsible
Who
for
are the,
advancing
how many
the site.
people are the final approval authority?
There are a number of people
Can you
that
give me a
are
number?
engaged in approving
Can you
the
give
plan.
me a number?
No, I do not have
Okay.
a firm number.
Can you just confirm whether or not, I understand this is an open investigation, but in order to dispel conspiracy theories, have you guys been able to subpoena the Discord records, or has the FBI, to your knowledge?
I believe that the FBI is working on those.
Okay. Is it factual to say that you have not ruled out that the shooter was working with other people or persons?
Again, the FBI is conducting the criminal investigation into
Can
the
you,
shooter.
at least in an effort to dispel theories, can you confirm or deny that?
At this time, we do not have that there were any other people engaged.
So you believe he's
So here she says, at this time, we do not believe any other people have been engaged. Then why couldn't she say the number of casings on the roof? Because then the two could be put together. So she's still saying he was acting alone. But there's a gotcha in here that I think it's Congressman Luna, I believe that's her name, gets her on.
acting alone?
I do.
Okay. Have you been made aware of multiple eyewitness reporting that there was a second shooting on a water tower?
I do not have any information related to any second.
Okay, the reason I asked that is because according to testimony from multiple witnesses, they did report that. And again, to my understanding, there were over 40 teams that were briefed by the Butler ESU. And I want to make sure that people are aware, if you're saying that there's not another that we are able to clear that information, because from this whole entire briefing, it doesn't seem like much information has been able to get out to the American people. So
I'm going to pause there for a second. So she says, according to multiple eyewitnesses, there was somebody else over on the tower, but according to the official reports from Secret Service, they didn't have anybody over on the tower. Then who is this person? That's the question where people are saying, was there somebody up there assisting crooks in this operation? And now there's you see where people are going with this. And she's saying, I don't know anything about that. But the butler, the Butner, is it Butner or Butler? The local police were in with the briefing, and Secret Service was there as well.
I'm trying to dispel rumors, as I'm sure you understand. Was it true that Secret Service was present at the Butler ESU briefing?
There was a briefing between the counter teams
Was
that were working
Secret
on the
Service
ground.
present?
Yes, to my knowledge.
Okay, I want to read you a report from people that seem to be throwing you under the bus and stated that they were in attendance and that Secret Service was not in attendance at the security briefing, according to individuals with knowledge, to also include that the AGR building where the crooks was located was actually not a part of their security perimeter for that. So there was not Secret Service present. It seems as though that when you were asked earlier from Rep. Kristamurthy about whether or not Secret Service was aware of a you had said no, they were unaware of a and yet, according to communications, again, from law enforcement that were in some of these group chats, they actually had reported that Secret Service was made aware of it at around 5:59 p.m. as a part of the command, including Secret Service, aware of messages and requests about information about the suspect's location. Can you please tell me if you have knowledge of that at all?
Again, I think we're conflating the difference between the term and suspicious
But you guys did have knowledge at 5:59 p.m. according to those group chats, did you not?
of a suspicious individual.
Okay. Chairman, in my opinion, according to some of the testimony today, I feel that you have perjured yourself in some instances. And so I'm going to ask for a full review of the transcripts by staff. And if you find that to be the case, I do ask that you bring perjury charges against the director. I will say this, it is very frustrating, and I've talked to my colleagues and we've said it to your face, that you have been up here basically stonewalling our ability to get the answers to the American people. And what I will also say is that every single member of Congress does not feel safe with you in charge. You have
So the perjury is going to be because of the security detail where she said that Secret Service was in the briefing, that was done with Butler PD. There's a lot of Butler PD, including, I believe, the police commissioner, that the Secret Service was not actually there. There is also discrepancy when they're saying that we were warned that there was a guy over there and he was getting ready to use the hole puncher. There was a guy over there, but we didn't consider it to be a problematic. And yes, I'm using that word instead of the word they use because, again, YouTube. But they're saying that he was problematic, and instead they're saying, oh, he wasn't problematic. He was just suspicious. And so apparently you can let a president go up on stage and speak in front of people, even if there's somebody that's suspicious, and even though there's a crowd yelling, and even though that local PD was stating there's a problem over here, they at no point thought to pull down the president and make sure everything was secure before letting things continue. And that's where she's saying, look, there's enough discrepancies here that I'm going to push for perjury on you. I want a full investigation of these logs and the timing and the witnesses. Because now, again, we're not trusting the three-letter agencies. And here's the good news. There's a whole lot of people in the Congress and the Senate and in the government that also don't. Now, it doesn't mean, this once again turns out to be a whole lot of, we're going to write angry letters and we're going to complain and we're going to condemn. But the head of the Secret Service serves at the will of the president directly. That's why a lot of people are trying to get Biden to fire her. But if he decides to keep her, that is on him. That's why a lot of times it's so frustrating, because you say, well, all Congress does is write angry letters. But that's all they can do, because this is not somebody that's hired or fired or paid, although they may be paid, by the will of Congress. That's the problem they're having with Mayorkas. He's totally dropped the ball at the border. He keeps saying everything's fine when we have records proving it's not fine, but he serves at the will of the people. So yes, they can call for certain things and certain actions, but you've got to get basically every Republican on board with that to make anything happen. And if you have 3 or 5 or 10 or whatever that have compromising material they've been caught in, and the government's using that to control them, you've got some of them that maybe in purple or maybe even blue districts that want to keep their jobs, and they're afraid to talk or afraid to vote a certain way. So it only takes out of, there's 435 members of Congress. When you've got 200 people getting all 205, 10, whatever, on the same page, voting the same way, is exceptionally difficult. And all it takes is 3 or 4 or 5 of them to say, well, if you want my vote, you need to do X for me, and hold the other 200 at bay. And this is the problem with having very close numbers and counts in the Congress and the Senate and everything else, because you can't get a whole lot done. This is what happened to Trump's administration. Why he couldn't get much done during his first 4 years is because you had a large number of Democrats and several even neocon Republicans that didn't want to work with him and just wanted to drag their feet to get through his presidency, where nothing really changed, because he wanted to make a lot of big change, and the neocons and rhinos and Democrats didn't want to get anything done. And then when you've got a Democrat president in, and he wants to do a lot of things that maybe conservatives don't agree with, the reason why the conservatives get so furious is because a lot of Republicans and neocons and rhinos will vote alongside the Democrat to help them get their agenda done. But when it's the other way and conservatives are in, they don't get any help from anybody other than that's what happened when you look at the UK elections and why the Tories got voted out. Because the Tories were doing what the leftists wanted. And conservatives said, it's doing us no good voting conservative for the Conservative Party, because they're not conservative anymore. Vote them out. And maybe they'll learn their lesson that they actually need to be conservative. And the new conservatives, which I would call more of like the nationals, the people that actually want to do the will of the people, is now the Reform Party, and they have massive growth. So it's not just the United States that's going through this. The same thing happened to Le Pen in France. Conservatives won a large number of the votes, but because of the way everything's aligned, the leftists over there merged with the basically socialist communists over there to keep the conservatives out of power. It's a big power play, and we're going to have to see how all of this plays out, but it's frustrating a lot of people, because it seems that the governments are not doing what the will of the people demand, and they're doing everything they can to stonewall and lie and hide the truth from people. And that's why people are getting furious over this stuff. I'll let her finish the rest. She only has about a minute left.
Heard that, and I think that we are all sitting ducks with you in directing the Secret Service currently. But more importantly, it sends a message to our adversaries that we are not protected, and we are one of the strongest countries in the world, so you have essentially made us a less safe country because of it. As a result of that, I'm asking you to formally step down. I share my same opinions as my Democrat colleagues, and I also think that your efforts to bring forward a full investigation and report in 60 days is unacceptable. And as a result of that, I'm going to do everything in my legislative toolkit to ensure that that happens sooner rather than later. And I'm sure that you know that we brought a vote on inherent contempt against Garland for essentially blocking a congressional investigation, and I don't think that you should be any different. So I will say that I am just completely disgusted by your performance today, and I understand that you are probably in a position where you are being told not to testify, which is why we had to subpoena you. I think that goes back to Garland. But again, that is part of the flushing that we need to get out of Washington, and I would be happy to assist in that process. Chairman, I yield the rest of my time.
So, based Mrs. Luna, I share everyone's frustration with our own government. It was made to make sure that there aren't big changes that can happen, that it's to turn the direction of the country is supposed to be slow. But then you now have executive orders by the president that supersede everything. That's not supposed to really be anything that's used except during, wartime and other things like that. And so people are finding ways to get around the system as it should be. And now you've got the Congress and the Senate, and their hands are tied. President's going crazy with executive orders, and the deep state is finding ways to compromise many in our government to do the will of the three-letter agencies, or something bad might happen to you, or some incriminating evidence might be found on a laptop that you have, so maybe you should shut up and just play ball. We've got an internal rot in our government, and this today was just another example of all that rot festering under the surface. And the point I was talking about earlier, and this is the most frightening aspect, if crooks succeeded in ending Trump, who would go to jail? Not Crooks. He's no longer with us, thank God. He's not with us anymore. Would she go to jail? No, because she just failed at her job. The most she'd do is get fired. So what about the people on the ground that had this lapse in security, and the site lead or the location lead for the Secret Service, the site lead for Secret Service? What if they failed in covering this building? The most they do is get fired because they failed at their job. So we could have seen the ending of Trump, and at most 3 to 5 people would have lost their jobs. That tells you how big a deal this is, but it also tells you what a lack of accountability in just a couple key positions, how quickly that can determine the path and the direction of this country. If that doesn't make you fearful of the power of the bureaucracy and the unelected officials in our government, it should. It's why a lot of people, like myself, are losing faith. And when you lose faith in the people that are supposed to direct the country and make the laws and secure our future in the world, when you don't trust those people anymore, that's when anarchy and the crazy times arrive. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that, because there's a total breakdown in the faith in the system. And these people only quote unquote rule or govern because of our faith in them and the system. Once that's lost, people are going to say, I don't have faith in it anymore. I'm not going to do what you ask me. I'm going to do what my local politician or my local laws or my local area, because I don't believe anymore. I don't want to pay taxes anymore. I don't want to serve in the military anymore. I don't want to do anything for this big machine that doesn't like me. That's happening. It's happening quickly, and all hell's going to break loose if it does. Guys, thank you very much for joining me here on the channel. If you would, please join me on betterbachelor.locals.com. A great community of like-minded people over there, a lot more free speech. We discuss things in much more detail than we can over here on YouTube, and it would support my work and help keep me an independent journalist. I'm now kind of an independent newscaster and journalist. How frightening is that? Guys, I will leave it there. We will see you in the next one.